Are you a bully? Not would you know a bully if you saw one, but would you know if you were one? Are you a bully? Lots of ways that you can tell if you're a bully. Today I want to ask you one question that will give you a clue. Depending on how you answer this question will clue you in, give you an initial indication that you may in fact be a bully. The question is a simple one, and it's this. Do you hate Tom Brady? Do you hate Tom Brady? Tom Brady is an NFL quarterback. If you're not familiar with who Tom Brady is, you can go back under the rock that you've been living under for years, but do you hate Tom Brady? It's the first indication that you may in fact be a bully, because there's lots of reasons to hate Tom Brady. In fact, I want to share with you today the top 5 reasons why you should hate Tom Brady. The first reason why you should hate Tom Brady is this. He looks like that on a bad day. He looks like that when he takes his helmet off and is walking off the field. Tom Brady looks better on his worst day than you do on your best day. They don't have Photoshop tools good enough to make any of us look like that. That's why you should hate Tom Brady. Second reason you should hate Tom Brady is her. His wife is named Gisele Bündchen. If you don't know who Gisele Bündchen is, she's a Brazilian supermodel. And for the last 14 years, she has been the top earning fashion model in the world. During those 14 years, she married Tom Brady. She is approaching 40 years old and has had 2 children. Last year, she made $30.5 million doing this. And it was worth it. Third reason you should hate Tom Brady are these rings that he has. He has 5 Super Bowl rings. There's only one other person in history who has 5 Super Bowl rings. He's the only one who is a quarterback who has done it with one single team. You want to hate Tom Brady? Hate him because of those rings. Fourth reason you should hate Tom Brady, he is richer than Midas. He and his wife, Gisele Bündchen, who we referred to earlier as a reason for you hating Tom Brady, just bought a $55 million mansion in Los Angeles. Last year, he signed a new 2-year contract to play the game of football. To play football for 2 years, 16 games a year. He gets more money if they go into the postseason. For the 2 16-game seasons, he signed a $44 million contract to play 16 games of football, of which he only plays half of the game. He has a net worth estimated by Forbes magazine of $180 million. And in case you forgot, he is married to Gisele Bündchen, who has a net worth herself of $380 million. You want to hate Tom Brady? Hate him because he's got piles of money. Fifth reason you should hate Tom Brady is really simple. Because you're not Tom Brady. You hate Tom Brady? Is it possible to hate Tom Brady? Well, it's an indication that you may be a bully. Thousands of years ago, actually 3,500 years before Tom Brady was Tom Brady, there was another young man who was amazing and who was successful and who was hated for it. He was bullied by his closest friends, by his family members. He was despised for his success and for the things that he accomplished. And his name was Joseph. He is one of the most interesting and significant characters in the entire Hebrew Bible. In fact, Joseph's story takes up the last third of the first book of the Hebrew Bible, of the book of Genesis. In fact, in the book of Genesis, if you read the first book in the Bible, you will begin at the creation of the heavens and the earth. In the book of Genesis, in order to describe the beginning of everything that is, the story of the creation of the universe, of the heavens and the earth, comprises 35 verses of the book of Genesis. If you add to that the story of the beginning of humanity, the birth and the origins of mankind, the story, as the Bible tells it, of Adam and Eve, you then have a total of 56 verses in the book of Genesis that tell the story of how everything and everyone came to be. In that same book of Genesis, there are 355 verses about this man named Joseph. His life is worth learning from. His life is worth paying attention to. And for the next 7 weeks, I want us to begin our summer by wandering around in the life of Joseph and exploring one thing. How do we live a life of faith in a community, in a culture, in a society of bullies? How do we live a true life of faith in a culture of bullies? The lessons are played out for us in this significant and compelling character of Joseph, the son of Jacob. But before we start wandering around in his life, would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, that you would use your word spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to challenge us and to guide us, to be a light unto our path, that we might recognize how we can better live a life of faith in a culture that tries to beat us down and push us around. Pray that for myself and for my family, for all of us here, for I ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, unfortunately, Joseph's Tinder profile was not preserved for us, so we don't really know what he looked like. We don't know the kinds of things that would be important if he were on eHarmony or Match.com. We don't know how he would describe his own personality. We don't know whether he was generous or obnoxious. We don't know whether he was an introvert or an extrovert. We really don't know kind of the things that you might know on first impression of meeting this young man named Joseph, but we do know a lot about his family. See, he was the descendant of spiritual royalty. He was the great-grandson of the patriarch of the people of God. He was the great-grandson of Abraham and Sarah. He was the grandson of Abraham and Sarah's only son, Isaac. And he was the 11th son of Isaac's son, Jacob. He grew up, as many people do today, in a blended family. He grew up in a family with 4 moms. Now, before we get all bent out of shape and think this is kind of weird and kind of creepy, that was the custom of the day. Back 3,500 years ago, if you were a woman who was without children or without a husband and without prospects, you were basically embedded into a wealthy patriarch's family. And granted, it was for recreational and procreational purposes, but it gave you, it was kind of a welfare program. It gave you a home, it gave you stability, and if you were fortunate, it gave you children to care for you in your old age. And Joseph's family was such a family. The patriarch Jacob had 2 wives and 2 concubines. 2 women who they adopted into their family for recreational and procreational purposes. The most significant of the 4 wives was a woman named Leah. Leah was the mother of 6 of Joseph's brothers. She was the mother of Judah and the mother of Reuben and the mother of Simeon and the mother of Issachar and the mother of Zebulun and the mother of Levi. She was also the mother of the only girl among all of Joseph's siblings. Her name was Dinah. And she apparently was in the kitchen with someone playing an old banjo. Thank you. Thank you for laughing at that. When I thought of this week, I thought it was hilarious. But I thought, no one's going to get the joke. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah, strumming on the old banjo. And the theologians among us will say, they didn't even have banjos back then. But it was funny, right? So there was Dinah, and then there were the two concubines. There was Bilhah, who had two children named Dan and Naphtali. And then there was Zilpah, who had two children named Gad and Asher. And then there was the fourth mom. And the fourth mom was named Rachel. And she was Jacob's favorite wife. Now, when I tell my wife she's my favorite wife, it doesn't really mean any, because I only have had one. But when you have four and you say, you're my favorite of the four, that means something to everybody in the family. The problem is that Rachel could not conceive. She was unable to have children until very late in life. And late in their life, Jacob and Rebekah had a son named Joseph. And immediately, Joseph became Jacob's favorite son. Can you imagine growing up in that household? This was a blended family with 4 moms. He had 10 older brothers. My younger brother only has 1 older brother, and I almost killed him. Can you imagine having 10 older brothers, and the drama and the dynamics and the structure of a blended family 3,500 years ago was no different or no easier than it is today. This was the environment in which Joseph grew up, and his father did him no favors by saying, oh, by the way, this one is my favorite. And in case anybody missed the message that Joseph was Jacob's favorite, he made for him a ketonet pasim. A ketonet pasim was a flowing robe. If you ever saw the movie Lawrence of Arabia, the Arab Bedouins who rode around on horseback had these large flowing robes. They were ketonet pasims. And typically, when you were a Bedouin or you were living in an agrarian culture, your entire wardrobe was made up of shades of dirt. You had different shades of brown and tan and gray. That was all you had. But if you had an article of clothing that had color, that had red or blue or purple or some bright color in it, other than bloodstains, it was a priceless garment. But this ketonet pasim that Jacob gave to Joseph didn't have a color, it had many colors. It was a long flowing robe that had long sleeves and went down to the ground, and he wore it over whatever he was wearing. And it had the multi-technicolor glow that you could not mistake what it was saying. It was saying, Joseph is my favorite. And it said it right in the face of his 10 older brothers. Did you have varsity jackets in high school? We had varsity jackets. This was back in the day when varsity jackets were a big thing. And you could only get a varsity jacket if you were on a varsity sports team. And in my high school, every year you were in a varsity sports team, you got emblems that you put on your sleeve. And if you were an all-state player or a championship player, or you held some type of sporting recognition, you wore that on your other sleeve. There were like these jackets that you walked around with to say, hey, I'm a big shot, I'm a stud, I am somebody. And you wore these varsity jackets. It's funny, in my high school, our chess team had varsity jackets. I never really understood that. You see these guys, I have my varsity jacket. But Joseph had that. That was his ketonet pasim. It was his multicolored jacket. And his 10 older brothers hated him for it. Hated him because he was his father's favorite. But just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it gets worse. Because Joseph has 2 dreams. And not only does he have these 2 dreams about his future and the future of his family, he tells them these dreams. If I am Joseph's friend, I'm telling him, whoa, slow your roll there, Joe. Back down a little bit. I don't think you want to tell your bros about this dream. Because his first dream was a dream of him working in a field with his brothers. And they were cutting the wheat, and as they were cutting the wheat and bundling it into sheaves, his bundle stood up and rose up above everyone else's bundles. And then the bundles of his brothers all bowed down to them. And I'm saying to Joseph, if I'm his friend, don't tell them that. That is poking the bear. You don't want to let them know that you had a dream that they're going to bow down to you. And he did. And they said, yo, right, you're going to be the boss over us? You're going to rule over us? I don't think so, you punk. And they hated him even more, if that was possible, because of the dreams that he had and because the way that he talked about it. And he had a second dream. And he told him the second dream. The second dream was there was the sun and the moon and the stars, and there were 11 stars, and all of them bowed down to him. So now it wasn't just his brothers that were bowing down to him, it was his mother and his father. And his father was like, why did you tell them this? Get a clue there, Joe. Figure this out. You're even frustrating me. And their envy and their jealousy increased, and their father didn't know what to do. Now, we can speculate. We don't know. That he was an obnoxious punk. That he wore that multicolored coat like a badge of honor and flashed it in everyone's face. That he was obnoxious and rude. There are people that believe he was genuinely a spoiled brat, but we don't know. We don't know whether or not he handled this with grace or whether or not he handled it by lording it over his brothers. It's very possible that when he shared his dream, he was just telling them what he was excited about, what he felt was good for them. Be like little Tommy Brady, 17-year-old Tommy Brady, telling his friends and his family, I had this dream. I had this dream that one day I'm going to play in the Super Bowl. And I'm going to be in the Super Bowl. I'm going to win the Super Bowl. And I'm going to be the MVP of the Super Bowl. And I'm going to hold up the trophy. And all of you will be beneath me applauding. And I'll be the champion of the world. Isn't that great? Maybe that's how Joseph said that to his brothers. You see, Joseph didn't have a choice. He didn't have a choice to be born to Jacob's favorite wife. He didn't have a choice. When his father gave him his coat and said, you are my favorite, what was he supposed to do with that? So don't make me your favorite, Dad. I want to be your worst son. I don't want to be your favorite son. This wasn't his choice. He didn't choose to have these dreams. And even if he had these dreams and he had these coats and he was kind of proud of it and kind of showed it in front of them, does that give them a reason to hate him? Is that enough of a reason to hate him? You see, the only people that had a choice in this story were the brothers. The story teaches us an uncomfortable truth. Truth that most of us don't like to accept. And it's very simply this. Some people have more. Some people have more than you. They have more talent. They have more skill. They have more resources. They have more opportunities. They have more chances. They have more friends. They are better looking. They are smarter. They work harder than you. There will always be people who have more. And it was true 3,500 years ago, just as it is true today. We have this twisted logic about how unfair that is. And we have this mutated perspective of what equality is supposed to be. And we define equality as everyone has the same amount of everything as everyone else. But that's not how the universe works. The universe was not designed for uniformity. The universe was designed for diversity. And every sunset is different, and every fingerprint is different, and even identical twins are individuals. And the beauty and the wonder of the universe that we live in is that some have more and some have less. And in the beauty of that diversity, we see the wonder of the world that we live in. This is true psychologically. Not everyone can be the same. Not everyone should be the same. The physics of it doesn't even make sense. Because basic physics tells us that no two objects can occupy exactly the same space at the same time. We are meant to be different. And that means that someone else will always have more of what you want. And I get it. I really do. I really get it. Because if you have even a shred of ambition in you, if you have ever thought that you wanted your life to matter, that you wanted your life to make a difference, if you wanted to do better, if you wanted to be the best that you can be, I understand, we all know that the metric for knowing what better looks like is to compare ourselves to somebody else. That's how we know what better is. I have this job, and I have this income, and I have this marriage, and I have this life, and I see this life, and it's better. And it's in that comparison, it's in that competition, it's in that ambition that the seeds of envy and jealousy are sown. I so understand that. I'm afraid I share this story with you too often of my struggle with this. My struggle with I want to make a difference. I want to be better than average. I want to be great. I want to live a significant life. I have ambition. And 20 years ago, when I felt called into the ministry, I wanted to do great things for the kingdom of heaven. I sanctified that ambition, and I put it in the form of a servant, and I became a pastor of a tiny little church of 100, 150 people. I began to serve them and work with them, and be their shepherd and their teacher and their pastor, learn what that meant. But it was in Dallas, Texas. I lived in Dallas, Texas. Are you familiar with Dallas, Texas? City up to the north? This is the land of the $1,000 millionaires and the land of the super mega churches. This is a small church in Dallas, in case you're unfamiliar. There was a time when the largest churches in every major denomination in America had a church in Dallas. They were the largest in their denominations. We were literally down the road for a season from the fastest growing church in America. And I'm working in a church of 100 or 150 people. Every day when I drove home from my church to my home, I would drive by this church that seemed to constantly be growing. It seemed like every week they were building something new parking lots or new buildings or new stadiums, or they had banners. And every time I went by there, and for years we were in such a place financially that we only had one car. So I would run to church and I would run by that church. And the thing that ate my chili about that place was that the pastor of that church drove a red Corvette. And I would run by that church and go, I want a red Corvette. I want to be the pastor. I could be a vet guy. I could do a vet. And I'm not proud of this. I'm ashamed of this. But there were multiple times when I went by that red Corvette parked out in front of that growing church. And I looked at it and I said, what a jerk. I'm way more spiritual than that guy. And on my best days, I would say, why him? Why not me? And in my darkest moments, I would say, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? How come I can't be the vet guy? What makes a bully? Where do bullies come from? Undoubtedly, bullies are born out of the seedbed of envy and jealousy, but there's other factors. There's anger, and there's abuse, and there's abandonment. There's psychological issues, why a person would grow up and feel that they had to diminish someone else so they could feel better about themselves. And I'm not talking about just physical bullies. I'm talking about political bullies and spiritual bullies and relational bullies. I'm talking about people who have to tear others down to feel better about themselves. Where does that come from? I think there's a lot of factors that weigh in, whether you're a political bully or a spiritual bully, or whether you're a terrorist, for crying out loud. But I think what is common in all of them is one thing: insecurity. The fear of being insignificant, the fear of being overlooked. And that fear, that insecurity, that lack of true confidence causes them to want to tear you down and beat you up so that they can feel better about themselves. And when I see that behavior, I say, what are you afraid of? When I see it in the church, I see the church create legalistic behaviors and demand from people certain conformity. And I'm always suspicious that that's not rooted in the confidence they have, but in their own insecurity about what they believe, that their misery needs my company. This is where bullies come from. Political bullies and spiritual bullies and relational bullies. Out of envy and jealousy and insecurity. That's where it came from in me when I looked at the Corvette and said, what a jerk. And it's been a struggle. I wish I could tell you there was a day when I just realized, what am I doing? No, it's something I'm still learning. You see, I'm still working on getting to the place where I can look at that Corvette and look at that guy and go, good for you. Way to go. It's good that somebody besides a pimp and a drug dealer is driving a red Corvette. It's good for you. It's good that a pastor of a church can drive a cool car. It's good that the kingdom of God is growing. Good that your church is, the people are attracted there and people's lives are being changed. Good for you. You don't realize how hard that is for me to say even now. But what I had to learn to do, and it took a long time, for me to say, okay, am I doing my best? And rest in that. Because that's where my choice lies. Am I doing my best? And am I trusting God with the rest? Am I doing my best as a parent? Am I doing my best as a husband? Am I doing my best as a pastor? And trust God for the outcome. Trust God for the fruit. Trust God for the measure. Still hard. It's still hard for me. I think it's been hard for everybody. The story of Joseph and his brothers is 3,500 years old. And they were struggling with the same things. They were struggling with bullying their younger brother. And you could say, well, you know, Joseph brought it on his own head. Joseph was the youngest punk and he was proud of himself. Maybe he was, but I don't think so. I think he may have been naive, but he was a faithful man. As his story plays out, we'll see just the character that he really had. You see it at the end of this story in Genesis chapter 37, where he tells his family the second dream, and his brothers are even more envious and jealous, and his father is brooding about it and confused about it. What do I do? So his father tries to fix it. His father says, your brothers have taken our flocks. They probably had thousands and thousands of sheep and goats, and they had taken them from their homestead in a village called Hebron, north 50 miles to a valley called Shechem. And he said, I want you to go up and I want you to check on your brothers and report back to me. Tell me how things are going. Because they were looking for new grazing land. Now, I don't know what his father had in mind. Maybe his father thought, you know, maybe they'll beat some sense into him. Maybe, you know, maybe they'll talk it out. But Joseph had to know. He had to know, if I go up there, my father's not there, I'm going to get more than nuclear noogies when I show up. These guys hate me. But he says, yeah, I'll go. I'll do what you asked, Dad. And so he decides to leave, and he makes his way from Hebron, from the family compound, up to the valley of Shechem, which is about 50 miles north. But when he gets there, they're gone. They're not there. And so he's looking around, and he finds a stranger, and he says, oh, by the way, have you seen like a couple thousand sheep and goats and 10 angry shepherds? And the guy says, yeah, I overheard them the other day. They said they were going to Dothan, which is 15 miles beyond Shechem. Another couple days walk for Joseph. Now, he could have said, I'm done. Dad said, go find them in Shechem. They weren't there. I go home, I put on my Technicolor coat, and I party. I'm good. I don't need to go pick a fight with my brothers. They hate me. Well, what does it say he does? He says he went and he found them in Dothan. And he did what his father had asked. We don't know what Joseph was like. We can only speculate about that. We don't know whether he deserves the bullying that he got, but I really don't think so. Because he didn't have a choice to be his father's favorite. He didn't have a choice to take the coat. He didn't have a choice to get the dreams. He didn't have a choice to be born to his father's favorite wife. The only people with a choice in this story were the brothers. And they had a choice. Do I hate him or not? So do you hate Tom Brady? Do you? You hate Tom Brady? I can understand if you're a New York Jets fan or a Buffalo Bills fan, how you come to hate Tom Brady. It's easy to hate Tom Brady. He's got so much going on. But do you realize we are watching a once-in-a-generation story unfold? I mean, when Tom Brady was in high school, his freshman year in high school, he didn't even make the football team. He tried out for the JV team, and they let him ride the bench. He never even got in a single game his freshman year. And his freshman JV football team didn't win a single game that year. They were that bad, and he couldn't even play on that team. When he finally made the varsity as a sophomore, he had to share quarterbacking roles with another teammate. It wasn't until he was a senior in high school that he began to show some of his talent. It caught the eyes of some college recruiters, and he signed to play college football at the University of Michigan. When he got to the University of Michigan, he was the 7th quarterback and number 7 on the depth chart. His first 2 years, he never even got on the field in a game. He was so discouraged and disappointed that his father hired a sports psychologist to talk him through his depression and his discouragement about the game that he loved. When he finally became the starter at the University of Michigan, he platooned with another guy, even though he won 2 bowl games and brought the team back in miraculous fashion on a handful of occasions. They still used a 2-quarterback platoon system. When he was up for the NFL draft in 1999, he wasn't drafted until the 6th round. There were 198 players that were drafted before Tom Brady. Tom Brady was drafted 199 by the New England Patriots. In the year 2000, he never got on the field. He wouldn't have gotten on the field in the second season in 2001 were it not for the fact that the starting quarterback, Drew Bledsoe, was injured. When Tom Brady got on the field for the New England Patriots, he won a division championship 14 times. He never was the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots when they had a losing season. He won 5 Super Bowls. He went to 7 Super Bowls. He went to 12 Pro Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP 4 times. He was the MVP of the NFL 2 times. He holds virtually every record for quarterbacks in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. In the playoffs, Tom Brady holds the record for the most games played, the most games started by a quarterback, the most games won by a quarterback, the most consecutive wins, the most consecutive career home wins, the most touchdown passes, the most passing yards, the most passes completed, the most passes attempted, and the most division titles won by a starting quarterback at 14. He's played in the NFL Conference Championship game 11 times and been to 7 Super Bowls. In the postseason, he has a record 12 300-yard passing games, 12 of them. In the Super Bowl, he has the record for the most touchdown passes, 15. Most passing yards, 2,071. Most passes completed, 207. Most passes completed in the first half of a Super Bowl at 20. Most passes completed in any Super Bowl at 43. The most passing yards in a Super Bowl at 466. And the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history and 5 rings. Now you can hate Tom Brady. And you can hate him because he has more than you. Or you can look at it and say, look what I'm getting to see. A once-in-a-generation athlete in his prime at his best. So are you a bully? The world has enough bullies. Don't be.